So good evening, everybody. Today, actually, the first public lecture, which is conducted by the Building Services Engineering Sectional Committee 2015 and 16 section. And I am Prasanna Narangude, Chairman, current Chairman of the Building Services Engineering Sectional Committee for the year 2015 and 2016. So today, our speaker, resource person, engineer Buddika Hemashantha, will talk about the new area. Basically, if you look at the subject matter or the topic is international climate finance opportunities for Sri Lanka for sustainable development in Sri Lanka. Actually, we know what is development, and we are in a development era. Actually, since 2012, 13, and we are in a bit of a development era. And of course, we all are concerned about the sustainable development. And this is something in addition to that, how we get like funds for the sustainable development, and basically through international climate finance opportunities. And it is a bit of an interesting area for all of us to look at. And it is not actually about sustainable development, it is how to proceed this sustainable development internationally with international aids and supports and finance, basically the finance supports, and how we get those finance opportunities. So speaker, engineer M Buddika Hemashantha. He is a production of University of Moratuwa in mechanical engineering discipline, and he is having M engineering in energy technology, and also master MSc in environment and sustainable development. Also, he is currently reading his PhD in international climate policy at Radboud University in Netherlands. In addition to that, he is having about more than 11 years experience in similar field. He is currently working as the Chief Executive Officer in Sri Lanka Climate Fund. So he is a good resource person and is spending his more valuable times, and he has come all the way despite of his busy works. And we really appreciate his time, 1.5 hours, 2 hours for us, is committed for us, is really valuable. In addition to that, I will give a small brief about the overall topic. What he is going to cover today is abstract of the total presentation for you to have an initial opinion about what you are going to gather from today's presentations. Is something like this. 2015 is a momentous year for international development. Three global summits on finance, sustainable development, and climate change will define the ambition and direction of the agenda for the coming decades. How can we benefit from these developments to achieve sustainable development by attracting international climate finance? So that is the abstract about the overall area that we are going to cover today. I really expect that we all, including me, we all will get definitely benefited from this presentation and understanding about the new about these terms and technologies and basically this method of getting this finance for our sustainable development. So thank you very much, Engineer Buddika Hemashantha. Please come onto this stage and start your presentation. Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And first of all, I would like to thank Indika and Narangude and all of you who invited me for this event, and which is a very important event. And thanks also for the nice introduction about myself. And I hope that you all have some energy to absorb. I think time is 5:30, and I'm a little bit tired frankly speaking after a series of meetings, but I hope that I can try my best to give some valuable input for you all in this area. And if you have any question, either I don't know what's the procedure, but you can either stop me at any time. At the end. Okay, right, okay. Yeah, so Narang has already explained about the topic and international climate finance opportunities for sustainable development in Sri Lanka. And so today's presentation, I will be covering 4 areas. Actually, this is the 1 year. You have one more presentation? Okay. I can even talk without the slide, that's fine. Yeah? It's okay, yeah. So because I sent 2 presentations, and the first one, the one I made at the South Asia Power Congress, I think some of the CP and SEA fellows were there actually, and so this is the exact presentation. But then I did not explain anything about our organization. So there are some questions about what we are doing and what is our role and whether we are public or private, and a lot of questions. So what I did actually, I added some slide. So this, some of the slides are missing. So okay, I can. First, I will explain a little bit about Sri Lanka Climate Fund and its role and what we are doing right now. And then I will be talking very briefly about international development in the sustainable climate change area. And then I will be explaining to you about our situation in the international arena and the climate change, and then the international climate finance opportunities available for the projects and the programs in Sri Lanka and how we can access. So this is the things that I will be covering. For the first part, Sri Lanka Climate Fund, actually this is the original name is Sri Lanka Carbon Fund, which was established in 2008. And then at that time the minister was Minister Partly Champaka Ranawaka, who established this one. And then as the I was making a presentation at the Ministry of Environment at that time when I was working for a Norwegian company on the climate area. It's called DNE, Detnos Veritas, and then later I was invited to accept this post for the Carbon Fund actually. But then I had accepted post at United Nations, so I moved to Germany to United Nations, and then I spent 8 years, and then after 8 years I got kind of, okay, this time I had a competitive interview, and then only I got this opportunity. So Carbon Fund was the original name, which were mainly dealing with the carbon trading and developing the CDM projects and all these areas. And then later this year I started work in October, and then our board, basically Sri Lanka Climate Fund is 100% government owned organization. It's a 100% government owned private company. So we have a board consists of 4 board members and secretary to Ministry of Mahawel Development and Environment. He's also the chairman of our board, and also the chairman of Central Environment Authority, and secretary to Treasury also in our board, but he's such a busy person, he sent a representative, and also secretary to Ministry of Power and Energy, but he is acting as international climate finance expert in the board, and he's also my boss. Actually, he's the managing director. And that's the overall structure of. And Mr. Joseph is there. Actually, he has been working with the Carbon Fund for a long time, and so if you have any question about the Carbon Fund, you can even ask from him. Actually, I have only 2.5 months experience about the organization. So our new vision is to basically Sri Lanka will have a carbon neutral and climate resilient economy, and that is the vision. And our mission is to support government of Sri Lanka to achieve low carbon and climate resilient development by attracting international climate finance and building private public partnership. So that is our main mission. And then so far I can explain a little bit about SOPA. We have signed a couple of agreements with the few international organizations, including the World Bank. So for the World Bank, actually what we are going to do is we are going to bring around 20 million USD into the development of the non-conventional renewable energy in Sri Lanka. And this is, we are testing one of the instruments which is called scale-up crediting mechanism. And this is first time we are going to try in Sri Lanka. I would explain a little bit more later, how we are going to do it. And the second one, we also have signed an agreement with UNDP to promote bioenergy technologies in Sri Lanka. But our role would be basically to managing the funds and also to do the project management. And we will be more involving in the projects or program where there are some barriers, policy or the financial or whatever barriers, but we are not going to compete with the private sector. But if the projects or programs are economically viable, we will not involve in that. That's our scenario. And also we are in the process of getting the accreditation from the Green Climate Fund, Adaptation Fund, and also from the ISO certification fund. So these are the very briefly about what we are doing. And so when it comes to the, I will go to the topic. I think you will get bored if I talk more about the organization, so I don't want to put you in trouble. So if you have any question, you can ask later. So if I go to the topic now, I think Narang has already explained that this year is a very important year. I think you all know about that because we had a very important events this year, including the SDG goals which were adopted in September, and also the climate finance event, global climate finance event held in Ethiopia. And the third is this Paris, the climate change negotiation, Paris Agreement. So basically, Paris Agreement will make a huge change in all the business, what we are doing now, and it has already given some clear signal where we should head and what kind of economy we should maintain in order to avoid getting locked in our investment. And so there are 17 SDGs. I'm not going to explain, but what I want to mention here is that if you read carefully all the SDGs, climate finance is a key instrument in all these SDGs. And when it compared to Sri Lanka, actually now Sri Lanka is developing the Sustainable Development Act under the Ministry of Forestry and Sustainable Development. And they have already prepared the draft act, which I also had the opportunity to review it and provide my feedback. And according to the act, actually we are going to build a separate organization to work on that. Actually we are very advanced in that scenario because we are going with this Sustainable Development Act. Then we have the Paris Agreement and our goals, so we can combine these things together and then go a good path actually. And then but of course, in order to achieve these goals, we need money. So climate finance is going to play a critical role. One thing I would like to highlight: the country like Sri Lanka and the countries in Asia Pacific, we are not waiting this till this money is coming to our doorstep. Actually, we are acting. We have done a lot of things. I mean, for example, in Sri Lanka, in the power sector, we have 50% from the renewable energy, and also 50% is energy coming from the biomass. So we are really advanced in that. Not only us, actually, most of the countries in Asia Pacific, they are very advanced. But what we are lacking here is actually we are not really good at attracting international climate finance. So we are good at attracting the finance into the country from ADB or World Bank and other areas. But what we are lacking is the attracting the climate finance into the country. So when I was making the same presentation at the South Asia Power Congress, Professor Priyantha, I think you all know, right? He asked the question, why we need climate finance? Why we are receiving a lot of, ADB is putting money, World Bank is putting money, UNDP and all the donors are putting money. Then the problem is that yes, we receive the money, but not the climate finance, not dedicated finance for the mitigation and adaptation projects. So that's what we are lacking. Even the countries in our region like Nepal, Bangladesh, they are very successful, attracting the climate finance because they have a dedicated body to attract those finance. And so if you look at our, the climate change scenarios, if we go with this current emission path, we would end up having 4 degrees increase compared to the pre-industrialized scenario by 2100. But that is what not we need. I think you all know about the consequences of the climate change. So even in Sri Lanka now we are experiencing actually, according to some analysis, our rainfall, the rainfall is really low compared to the average rainfall in the past couple of years. I think we are better because we have only 7% less rainfall compared to the previous years. Whereas in India, in certain provinces, you have like around 20% less rainfall. Of course, this year we are lucky, but the thing is we have intensive. The intensity of the rain is really high, so which is not sustainable. Our dams are not designed to bear such kind of thing. Our power plant may not have design, and the roads are not designed to attract those. So these are the things that all the donors are also considering. I was at ADB for 2.5 months when I worked for UN to build a partnership with the ADB, and then what they are doing actually now they are considering this climate change impact in all their investment. So for us, I think in Sri Lankan projects also they are considering, but that's we are heading actually. Our transport system is not sustainable, and then if we have a severe weather, then I don't know whether we can manage it. Not only we, us actually, most of the countries that's the situation. And even I remember in Germany actually last year we had a severe flood, and then the poor countries like us are much better because they are, what happened actually, once you have a heavy rainfall, they simply shut down all the transport system because this is an electric based transport system. Or there are of course buses, even the buses can't go. can you imagine how we can, but we are still better actually. Even we have flooding, we can still use the public transport. But so this is the situation what we are facing now. So this 4 degree is not the target. And then if you want to, before the Paris Agreement, discussion was to achieve limit the temperature rise to 2 degrees by 2100. But now there are clear signals that from all the leaders, and also mostly from the powerful leaders like America and China, now we are planning to limit it to 1.5 degrees. Basically, we say that pursue to 1.5 degrees, and also to limit 2 degrees by 2050. And they are also talking about making the carbon neutrality by 2050. So that's the direction we are heading. So these signals are very clear, and I think unlike the Kyoto Protocol, because Kyoto Protocol was a kind of a little bit, because of the binding nature of the Kyoto Protocol, America couldn't sign, because even they want to sign, but they couldn't approve in the Senate. But this Paris Agreement, if you have had a chance to look at it, it is not a binding agreement. So it doesn't need the Senate approval. So it's very likely that America will sign it. So that in that case, most of the countries will sign that one. So now we need we need to reduce the carbon footprint by 6.2% between now and 2100 if you want to become carbon neutral in 2100. But after the Paris Agreement, all these analyses are outdated, I would say, because now people are talking about to becoming carbon neutral by 2050. I think in that case, Sri Lanka is really advanced. I will tell you why in my later slide. So coming back to the Paris Agreement, as I mentioned, that now we are talking, definitely we are going for 2 degree, the temperature rise will be limited to 2 degrees, and then they will also look for 1.5 degrees. There's a high possibility that they will look for 1.5 possibility, because they have already asked IPCC to prepare a research paper to evaluate the impact of increasing the temperature by 1.5 degrees. So it's very likely that IPCC will come up with severe impact, and then there will be a huge pressure for all the countries, not only developed or developing. Now there is no boundaries between developed or developing. So therefore, I think everyone has to act, and this is about the survival of the humanity. So, and this is, as I mentioned, this is not binding agreement, and there are no penalties for the parties, but there will be a very transparent system. I think this, because earlier in the Copenhagen and also the Kyoto Protocol is a very tight, this is a binding agreement, it's a bit tough agreement, and then this is it's a bit difficult to implement. And I think this is somewhere very good, because this is a middle path. It's not a binding, but you have targets, but you have some transparency framework in order to ensure that we will do what we can do with the capacities and the capabilities that countries have. And that's this review the progress every 5 years. And then it is not very clear in the Paris Agreement. Before the Paris Agreement, things were very clear that they will public funding. There will be around 100 billion public funding from the Green Climate Fund. But now they are talking about 100 billion from the private public investment. So it is, America was a little bit pushing. Of course, I was not in the Paris this year, but I was following, and a little bit pushing not to include 100 billion public finance. So this will, but of course there are a lot of private finance coming into the investment. Okay, so where we are today, so Sri Lanka and the climate change, and of course, as all of we know, actually we are not a high emitting country, so our carbon footprint is significantly low compared to the other countries. If you look at most of the research papers, actually we are talking about our carbon footprint on only 0.6, but that's mostly that's the CO2 emission. But if you look at overall GHG emission, our carbon footprint around 1.44 per capita, which is still significantly lower than the world average. But it doesn't mean that we should continue emitting more GHG, and so we have to be a responsible citizen, and we need to find all the ways to reduce the emission. The government has high ambitious targets, so I will talk to you later what type of targets there. And this is the CO2 emissions, and basically we are in increasing path. So even though our emission is low, but we are in the increasing path, but still it's significantly low compared to the other countries. And look at our GDP growth, it's also increasing. We are maintaining between 7 to 8 GDP growth rate. And according to the sustainable energy analysis, as of today, our electricity consumption is around 1 kilowatt hour per day per person, and the total energy consumption is around 17. By 2025, we would reach 3 and 25, but still it's not big amount. But now we are talking about how we can reduce that. That we can reduce the emission. Of course, people have right to use electricity, energy, and all those things. Okay, little bit about the intended national determined contribution to Paris by Sri Lanka, and the Sri Lankan government has already communicated to UN about our commitment. We are going to reduce 7% unconditionally compared to 2007 baseline scenario, and mostly the emission reduction would come from the power sector, and the other sectors also contribute, but it's not significant, like transport, waste, industries, and forests. And there are no clear targets in the other sectors, and of course there are also some ambiguities about the INDCs that we have developed, and now we are working together to improve the INDCs, and also in the process of developing the strategies for the INDCs that we are also going to do in parallel with the Sustainable Development Goals, because we have to go, these two have to go hand in hand. And so of course these things will be a national determined contribution according to the Paris Agreement. If parties do not put new INDCs, now they don't call INDCs, but if they don't put new commitment between now and April, and then those INDCs will be automatically considered as the national determined contribution by each country. And then so this is the the energy sector plan. The good thing actually, I'm not very clear about the other sectors in Sri Lanka, but in the power sector we have a very good plan. So we have a very good and important plan for the whole power sector. I would say until 2050. And also we have a very good long-term generation plan for the electricity sector. So these two are very important documents, and the agreement that we have signed today is actually result of these two policy documents. So it is, of course, we could add a little bit justification, but if we have a very good policy document in the country, it is very easy us to attract the climate finance, because what they look actually, they look whether these commitment and targets are embedded in our policy document. So it is in the master plan from the Power and Energy Ministry called Sri Lanka Energy Sector Development Plan for Knowledge-Based Economy, and the long-term generation plan developed by CB were very important document, and was the crucial document for us to attract climate finance. I think the power sector, there are a lot of climate finance coming now, and these two documents help a lot. But if you look at this chart, actually, that's what I said, the Sri Lanka is a little bit ahead compared to other countries. Only in the Paris they were talking about to become carbon neutral by 2050. So before that, actually, early this year, we had already planned to achieve the carbon neutrality by 2050. Of course, we need international climate finance, and our economy is not in a good condition, and then we cannot do all these things by ourselves. So definitely we need, but we had anyway some plan that to achieve the carbon neutrality. For that also, we are also working with the Costa Rica, which is a very good country, marketing their energy sector, marketing everything that they have. This is what we are lacking, actually, branding the country and to attract the, even we have 50% from non-conventional, renewable energy today, and we were not successful branding our country, attracting the climate finance. So, but what Costa Rica is doing, actually, they have compared to what they have nothing, but they have market. I mean, they were really successful getting the climate finance into the country. So we have a program with the Costa Rica. We are going to bring some delegates from Costa Rica to Sri Lanka to study Sri Lankan situation, and also we are taking both public and private sector entities to Costa Rica and to learn from their experience how they manage to attract climate finance. So that we are working with the World Bank on this, and we will start this soon in January and finish this work program by June. And yeah, I think this one, this is, this was tailored for the South Asia Power Congress. That's what I was talking. And this particular piece of document, because if you look at today, we have only 12% from the non-conventional renewable energy, and by 2020 we have a clear target in both in the Ministry of Power and Energy policy document and also in the long-term generation plan to achieve 20% from the non-conventional renewable energy. So this was very clear and very consistent, and then we could convince World Bank to get this, I think, as I mentioned, the 20 million USD into, but this is peanuts compared to what we need, because we need 2 billion USD to achieve this target. But parallelly, we are working also with the Green Climate Fund to get the finance into the NCRE development, and hopefully we will get, and let's see. But yeah, we are working on that. But as of today, there are no nationally, we cannot directly access the green climate finance. GCA, which is a UN body, they prepare to give money directly to the country, and then so that they can manage it internally. As of today, we have the multinational entities like World Bank, ADB, UNDP, so they are accredited under the GCF, and they can bring money into the country. Of course, when it comes to like billions, so sometimes it's better you get the money through this, and because GCF would also be a bit reluctant to pass the money to a small organization, these things. But when it comes to some like I would say like 50 to 100 million USD, something like that for a project or program, I think they would be happy to give it direct access. So that will reduce the transaction and all those things, because when you go through these international bodies, actually the transaction cost is significantly high, which has not been defined for the for the GCF. For example, adaptation fund, the transaction cost is around 8.5%. So basically, which means that if you get 100 million from adaptation fund, and then you have to give 8.5 million to the World Bank or UNDP. But if you have the direct access, all the money will remain in the country. So this is what GCF wants to promote, this direct access. But there we also need to understand what we can manage and what we cannot manage. So this is the thing. And then there are a lot of goals, and this is one thing, actually 20% target, and then also countries moving towards the carbon footprint, reducing the carbon footprint in the energy sector. And there are a lot of programs, and we also had put some cabinet papers to reduce the carbon footprint in the public sector, to give the take the leadership and give the example to the private sector. Apparently, private sector is really active, so they are going really fast. And if you look at now we are working with the private sector as well, and to promote this carbon footprint and the carbon neutrality. And they are I think they will also come along with the government sector. Maybe even they will go even before the government. And okay, so let's go to the international climate finance. This is a little bit analysis about how global climate finance in 2014 worked. So there are about 331 billion USD climate finance in the world. And if you look at, and most of this climate finance were attracted by East Asia and Pacific countries. So one of the reason might be that the countries are putting more money into the SIDs, small island developing states, as well as the LDCs, because which are very vulnerable into the impact of the climate change. And then the question is whether this is sufficient to achieve 2-degree target. And 331 billion is not definitely sufficient, because you need, according to the research and analysis, you need at least 1 trillion USD to limit the temperature increase by 2 degrees by 2100. But now actually countries are talking about making it carbon neutral by 2050, and also limiting the increase to 1.5. So in that situation, it could be even 3 trillion per year. So it is going to be a huge investment. The countries are really mobilizing this money. And then also it is very important to understand where this money come from, whether it's from the public sector, private sector, and some donors. So if you look at actually around over 60% of this climate finance is coming from the private sector, whereas only 38% is coming from the public sector. So the share of the private sector is increasing. So this is very important to see. That's why we are talking about to build in the private-public partnership. Because public sector can give the policy guarantee and then the security. But whereas the private sector, they have the money, and then they can put the money, they can put the right investment. But if you put because in the Paris Agreement, a very important thing came out actually, because business community also had some concern about, today they are looking at the most economically attractive option, right? But may not be the most, this investment may not be the low emission investment. So now Paris has given a clear signal that if you put your investment with a low emission, there is a possibility that your investment can get locked. So this is the clear message that we have received, and that's why people are, even the big companies are trying to put money into the renewable and the low emission investment. And then little bit, landscape about the climate finance promised in Paris. So there are some like 16 billion USD for the new initiatives, and then we also had the contribution about 1.5 billion to the existing funds, which is like adaptation fund, least developed countries, and this is not a huge amount. But if you look at the huge amount where it comes from private sector announcement, so they are going to put around 125 billion USD. So this, and of course government also has pledged they are going to put around 19 billion USD. The most the money will go to through GCF, and there's a pressure this money should come through the GCF, but the donors, they also want to keep the control of their work. Actually, for example, countries like Japan, they would prefer to have the direct funding so that they can transfer their technologies and they can meet their expectation. But of course UN also want to have this for the GCF, but it's a very complex story, but they will do the both actually. But the private investment, this is the place where we can try to tap basically, because 125 billion, most of the money is from the French organization. Maybe it's because the Paris, the COP was in France, and but this is the area where we are trying to tap and then get the most of the benefits. Of course, one thing I would like to mention that again, as I mentioned, if we have sound policies and consistent policies and the clear messages from the political leaders and as well from the ministries, and then it's very easy. Only thing what we need to do is we can go and ask some money for, let's say that now we are talking about a program to promote the carbon neutrality in all government buildings. So for that actually, of course we can go and say that okay, we need this much money for that, but only thing is we need to link this with the national development priorities, how it is linked, and then there should be a commitment from the political leaders that this investment would be utilized for the right investment, and for that they have already agreed on certain transparency framework and all these things. Since we are going to get the Green Climate Fund accreditation, we have almost developed all these procedures. Of course, one thing is very clear that they will not put even a single dollar if we do not comply with these procedures. Environmental, transparency, human rights, and all the things are very important for them. And yeah, so this is, and this 19 billion I already explained. Most of the money is coming from Germany, and Germany even now today they are talking about offsetting their individual emissions. Basically, they call it unnecessary emission from the unnecessary travel or unnecessary business, something like that. But yeah, Germany has, of course, they have a lot of money, so they have basically, so they have committed around 6 billion, and France, all these countries. The good thing is actually, if you look at the Green Climate Fund, it is supposed to get the money only mostly from the developed countries, because it's their responsibility since they have emitted more. That was the discussion earlier, but now it is a little bit watered down. And they are also like countries like Indonesia, South Korea, they also have contributed into the Green Climate Fund, just to demonstrate that, of course, South Korea is no longer developing, but yeah, just to demonstrate that they are also committed in this area. Okay, what opportunities do we have in Sri Lanka? What kind of climate finance opportunities we can under the UN Climate Finance, there are 3 instruments: Climate Fund, Adaptation Fund, and the JEP. Under the Green Climate Fund, currently we are working on 2 projects. One with the World Bank to attract the climate finance from the Green Climate Fund into the NCRE sector, and also one with the UNDP. So they are going to, they have already prepared the proposal. They already had a discussion with the top political leaders. The commitment is there, and they are going to introduce solar-based water purification system in the country. And this is a very good model actually. This is basically consists both mitigation and adaptation component. So this is what now world is promoting, because you cannot put money only into the mitigation. And they, in the Green Climate Fund, they have already agreed at minimum 50% of the climate finance should go to the adaptation activities. So this kind of model will be very, very useful. Now we need to think, how we can build such model in order to get more climate finance and build the right policies. Adaptation Fund is peanuts compared to the Green Climate Fund. They have only 100 million USD, and I don't think it will have may not have a very good future, adaptation fund, because now Green Climate Fund is basically replacing the adaptation fund, and they are giving the finance for both mitigation and adaptation. JEP will also play a key role. Of course, the finance is not huge amount today. I mean, now we are also managing very small fund from JEP, came through UNDP and SCA to promote bioenergy technologies in Sri Lanka. So in the first phase, it is covering around 22 projects. We are managing the fund and the also the project management part. When it comes to carbon finance component, we had the clean development mechanism. In Sri Lanka, we had around 23 registered projects. So it is kind of a little bit dead, because if you look at the price, is around 50 cents. But having said that, still there are some market, and we had some discussion with because we are also going to be a partner under the World Bank Partnership for Market Readiness. So we have already received the observer status, and Sri Lanka Climate Fund is the focal point for that. And that during that meeting in Jordan, actually we had some bilateral discussion with the CB and myself. We were participating, and then most of the countries, they have shown the interest to purchase the credits from Sri Lankan projects. So not only the CDM, actually in Sri Lanka, we also have the instrument called Sri Lanka Carbon Offset Scheme, and they are willing to purchase credits from this scheme, because one of the reason I know that the reason is actually now under the Kyoto Protocol, the system was more on top level, actually. The decisions were taken by the top level UN bodies, including of course the parties, countries. But then they found that it will not work. Now they want to give more responsibility and powers to the local authorities. So that's why they want to promote a scheme like this, which will give you more authority to the local entities, and also the opportunities to get the climate finance into the right person. So in this, therefore, I mean, we have introduced this carbon offset scheme. We already have registered one project, and then there are a couple of projects under the pipeline, and so they are interested to purchase from these credits. So, but of course, this we will be able to sell if we comply with these international standards, and there are not these are not very stringent standard, actually. These things we know very well how to do it, and so hopefully we are having some discussion with the Korea and Germany. Hopefully we will be able to sell some credits outside the Sri Lanka. But according as of today, our guidelines are just to meet the local demand. But in future we may go with the we are now in the process of developing the criteria to attract international market. Carbon partnership facility, I already explained about this. So that will bring around 20 million within next 5 to 7 years. Initially 12-15 million within 5 years, and then 20 million in the next 5 to 7 years. This will be basically, we have not yet decided how to use this one. Architecture has not yet been agreed. We have signed an agreement to facilitate this whole process. We still don't know. Of course, this will not go to individual projects like in the clean development mechanism. Probably it will go to develop the infrastructure for the NCRE, but who will be managing and how we are doing, and the discussion are yet to happen. And other climate finance, I think there are a lot of other opportunities like the ODA, World Bank, ADB, FDA. The good thing is actually now we had some discussion when we had a meeting on the Green Climate Finance Breakfast Forum organized by French Development Agency along with the French Embassy in October, where I made a presentation as well. They declared that 50% of the ODA will be for climate finance. So this is the trend, actually. So which means that they will, even in the ODA, official development assistance, they are increasing this share of the climate finance. So this is a very good development, actually, basically for the mitigation and adaptation project. This is the instruction that they have received from the French government. So, and even the World Bank has announced that they will increase the climate finance loan. And so trend is there. So we should, be proactive and try to, get the money into the country. And the second thing is, of course, green bond, and those things we are in Sri Lanka we don't have any green bond, but in outside the country there is a huge trend, and maybe we are also working with some banks how they can come up with some green bonds to promote this concept within the country. And yeah, basically that's all. And for the other sectors, we are also there are a lot of nationally approved mitigation action by UNDP, and for the transport sector. And also they are talking about electrification of the transport and the MRT system. and in the initial stage, and we are now reviewing this transport NAMA, and also UNDP has another nationally applicable mitigation action for the end user and the energy sector. So we are also, the one thing actually Sri Lanka, there's one big problem in all the countries, which is that you have a different instrument. So you cannot really manage what is happening in one sector and other sector, and then one project can be registered in CDM and carbon offset scheme. Yeah, sure.
You're referring to they are doing this, they are doing that. Could you clarify? Because they are ODA is different.
Oh no, ODA is the official development assistant.
Where is that?
No, this is basically the ODA which is coming from the countries. You know, the countries have signed an agreement internationally, and UN agreement, that they will put 0.5% of their GDP into developing countries. So this is the official development assistance.
They are we.
Sorry?
You are on whose side? Are you on that ODA one side, or are you Sri Lanka?
So you mean okay, so I would say that they means what I refer to here is the World Bank or the ADB or the other developed countries. Yeah.
Bring money.
Yes, we will be.
You are where?
We will basically facilitate.
You as an individual, you are on that side or Sri Lanka?
I will, of course, I will be in Sri Lankan side. I am a Sri Lankan, and yeah. No. Okay, I am working for the government, Sri Lankan government. Yeah. So basically, we are under 3 ministries. The one is the Ministry of Mahavali Development and Environment, and also they are close, as I mentioned earlier. So we are private organization under the 100% owned private organization of Sri Lankan government, and we have a board consists of secretaries from 3 ministries: Ministry of Secretary to Ministry of Mahavali Development, and earlier it was the Mr. Nihal Rupasinghe, but now he has moved to Megapolis, and now new minister is Mr. Uday Seneviratne. Mr. Uday, I'm really sorry, I have no idea, and whether he, sorry, no, that's fine. Yeah.
After 30 years working in the World Bank, retired, and then he wrote this book, Qualifications of an Economic Man. And what is he saying in that book? He said, in Confessions of an Economic Man, by John Perkins, have you heard of the book?
No.
Okay. He said that he worked for 30 years in the World Bank, and when he retired, his conscience made him write this book. It's a bestseller, it's been translated as well. He says the economic hitmen in the bank or other global money lending schemes, their job is to find borrowers, poor countries, so-called developing countries, underdeveloped countries. Sri Lanka qualifies, although we know about that as the middle income and so on, right? And the economic hitman's job is to create and induce the country to borrow money on projects, knowing that they will not be able to repay. Okay, you read it and see. He wants them to get into a debt trap. Now I'm saying, this is the economic man's job. And this concern hit him so badly that when he retired from the bank, he wrote 2 books. The first one is this famous Confessions, And the second one is the role of the United States in this. It's very bad. I mean, old people like myself can't live because we think what is the next generation getting into massive debt traps. These are traps, Then what is the alternative, you can ask me. And I will say, in the 1970s, there was a swing towards national development projects under what was called the DDC program, National Development Conflict Program. But that was very soon ridiculed. There was a left-wing insurrection. 9 months after that, government came into office and so on. And we find that in our country, we are fighting with each other. And the next result is that we are committing our future generation, who are the biggest earners of foreign exchange in our country today. Can I ask you? The housemaids. And do people ever mention that? Now I have attended numerous conferences with people talking about projections. We are going at 6%, we will make it 6.5% around next year. And where from? Nobody mentions housemaids. But in the newspaper you read they are being killed, they are being raped, they are being murdered. What is happening to their families here? The mothers and the sisters and the daughters of families here are being violated there. Families here are being destroyed. We don't have sisters and mothers working in the we don't have it. But do we care for our own flesh and blood? You are doing those things and supporting those things while we are learning from a learned man like yourself about these statistics and developments, not related to people. Forgive me, but I have been feeling about this for a long time, and I was tremendously impressed by the introduction that was given by your friends here. Coming here, and I was excited to find a person, Sri Lankan person, who has lived like that. That's excellent, that's very good. But can you change the system from the inside? Can you do what John Perkins did while you are working, you get signed?
Yeah, I think, I don't know, should I respond now or should I, the other questions?
Secular comment. You see the nature of the development. Our question as a country, where we are currently, and our financial situation. And you may be talking about something else, how we get the education climate assistance to develop our technical side of the to get the assistance to the sustainable development. If that is really valuable, and we should appreciate this thing, because as a country we should agree, but our current situation is that poor. So thank you very much, sir.
But
So thank you very much, sir, for your valuable thoughts.
No, that's all actually. But I can give a very brief, feedback, very briefly, sir. And I fully understand your concern about that we are, rely on our housemates. Yeah. But I can give one example, because when we get climate finance into the country, it is not only loan, we also get the grants, which means the free money coming to country. I can give one example. Even today, actually, we had a discussion with the technology provider for the biomass field, and it's a UNDP project, which is it's a grant, 50% grant, and then this is a Sri Lankan person who developed the biomass-based biomass boilers, and then this money is going to him, and then out of 22 projects, we have given him 6 projects, and the project cost I cannot tell, but I can say 50% is a grant. So which means that with the 50% of the money, he does that one, and then he creates some employment opportunities. And also now we are thinking about giving more opportunities for the Sri Lankan, because government has a policy to enhance the SMEs, and for that actually there are some I don't say that it will be the, it's just a one tiny example how this grant could help to increase the employment opportunities within the country. That could potentially reduce our mothers and sisters going outside and doing unnecessary things. But this is just a, I understand your concern. Actually, I don't have a clear answer.
Maybe I'm just to know whether that statistic is decreasing. The statistic of the women being employed in government. Is it increasing or is it increasing? I'm beginning it's increasing. So is the case here there's something particularly wrong? And we engineers, we are the elites, not the economists. The engineers who are the ability to create the jobs, right? But we should not create for the other side.
That's true.
So, any further?
How we can implement team development mechanism in Sri Lanka?
Implement.
Yes.
Okay, so as you probably know, the clean development mechanism is one instrument of the Kyoto Protocol, and so far we have registered around 22 projects, but now market is down actually, right? And I would say that we have not really fully exploited the CDM finance into the country. How we can improve, even though we are a bit late, so the second commitment period of the Kyoto Protocol will run until 2023, including the grace period. And since I work for UN, I know a little bit more about actually. So second commitment period targets are already achieved by the countries. So literally there is no demand for new CER. So if you generate one CDM project today, you cannot really sell because there is no demand, there is no market. Because second commitment period signed only a couple of countries. The big emitters simply left the Kyoto Protocol. But still there are some demand. For example, countries like Norway, Sweden, Switzerland, Germany, they have ambitious targets. They have taken additional target outside the UN commitment, and they want to achieve their internal emission. For example, in Sweden, they have internal target, and if they want to reduce their emission, 1 ton of CO2 is 150 USD. So in that case, what they are doing is they are going to purchase credits from the developing countries, from the CDM projects. So we still have some opportunity to trade, not for $150, but maybe $4 to $5. And so now what we are doing, of course, they will not be buying the projects from all the projects. So they have in their mind what sort of projects they are interested. Depends on the political will and then the needs of the country and all those things. And then we are having some discussion with the Norway and the Sweden actually. So they have certain criteria, and we are trying to promote some of our projects. But we have to be a little bit, strategic when we approach which organization we should approach, right? Because when we have one wind plant, actually a new wind plant, we cannot simply go and ask from Germany because they have certain criteria. We just need to make sure that whether we meet these criteria before we go there. Yeah.
I have a question for you. Can you share some more case studies where grants were given and people on the ground, this case study you mentioned, few examples where individuals made a real difference and where these funds and are making a difference?
As I mentioned, I joined this organization 2.5 months ago. For me, actually, this agreement that we signed with the UNDP is the first one I know, because I was outside the country for last 8 years, and so I came only in October to get the job. And so this is one of the examples that I have in my mind. But there are certain things in the pipeline. For example, we are UNDP together with the Ministry of Transport and the Ministry of Environment is developing a nationally appropriate mitigation action. It's a national program for the transport sector to build to reduce the emission. It's an MRT system, and they are going to give 10 free buses. You are asking about what are the real benefits, right? The free buses, and there are some differences. They basically want to give it to private sector, and we are trying to balance it, for the private sector and public sector. As I mentioned that we need to ensure that we utilize these funds with the best interest of the donors. So in order to make sure, but this is another example. But in the power sector also, UNDP is also going to install around 25 solar PV units, and then some biodigesters, and most of them are grant. Even the GCF, actually GCF has a grant, and they have soft loan, and they also we can go for blending and all those kind of instrument. What we are going to we are interested on getting the soft loan and grants. So grant, what will be the amount, we still don't know, but there are some grants actually. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Just another question. Are there grants to convert the public, say, the bus system, government bus system or three-wheelers, to convert them to natural gas or projects like that? Is there funding? Because that will make a real change instantly on the ground.
Yeah. Actually, there are two things in the budget. I don't know whether you had chance to read the budget. In the budget, there's a budget proposal to convert all three-wheelers into electric three-wheelers, right? And I don't know whether it's still there. So in the original draft, it was there. So government has allocated some money. I think around, I don't know, Mr. Joseph, whether you remember, around 2 billion Sri Lankan rupees or something like that they have allocated, but I don't know whether it has been dropped. But when I had a discussion with the UNDP in New York, they had this initiative from the beginning, but they found it very difficult to implement in Sri Lanka due to various reasons, right? And that's why they have switched from three-wheelers to the buses, right? But we have done one feasibility study report with Japanese company to do to convert the three-wheelers, fossil fuel three-wheelers to electric three-wheelers. It should be really, electric doesn't mean the carbon neutral, right? Because if you get it from the coal, it will not be a carbon neutral. It may even add more emission. Of course, at least it will have some co-benefits, like we will not have emission, we have less emission in the city. But they had some attempt. Actually, we are still working with that project. And we also had, after this budget proposal, we had a renewed discussion with the UNDP also to translate, because I think we have, I don't know how many three-wheelers, I heard like we have like 5 lakhs or something like that. There's a huge number of three-wheelers in Sri Lanka, right? So 5 lakhs and 10 lakhs, you see? Yeah. 1 million, yeah. Yeah. But that is, we are working on that actually together with Ministry of Transport. We had already one research, and then UNDP is a bit reluctant to come back because they had some concern. I had some discussion 2 weeks ago, and also, but you never know, it so depends on the interest of the donors, as I mentioned actually. One thing I want to mention, no one will give even a single penny just because we are poor or we need money. So they have their interest. The only thing is we should not compromise our interest to get the money. We should strategically use this money to meet our national objectives. But that we should know what their interest. They don't put it on the papers. So that's something a bit difficult. But I have been, talking with the CB also actually the class, and sometimes people are telling, when you meet, okay, you need to do that. But if you look at the long-term generation plan, they have put coal pump, but because that is what we can do. So we can put the coal because that's most economically attractive method for us, right? Of course, we have some new R&D and all this, but we don't want to, overstate and say that, oh no, we can put, but what we need to be practical and say what we can do. And then, if you want us to go to that path, we can go, but bring the money into the country. So that's what we should tell, and that will help us to get some, and that's what I said, this policy paper and the long-term generation plan really help us because we are really consistent.
Thank you very much. Just a small comment.
Yeah.
An American ambassador to the UN, when she visited Sri Lanka or India, I saw in the media, she took a three-wheeler, and that was converted to natural gas. So they are really pushing for it.
Okay.
So I think getting approvals to convert three-wheelers, I think that would be easier because at very high level they were talking about it. But the point you made, whether that's just a facade behind, I don't know, but still, yeah, it could win hearts and minds as well. So I think it's win-win if you start with the three-wheelers at least. It's a great idea, three-wheelers and buses. Thank you so much.
I think if this budget proposal, come into effect, because this policy is there. Of course, it's not a policy document, but in Sri Lanka we use this as the certain policies. So there is a possibility. Yeah.
You mentioned that particular projects are based in Sri Lanka for this CDM. So are these all related to energy sector or industry based to manufacturing or?
I think Mr. Joseph, you can correct me if I am wrong. Most of them are energy. Yeah. There is a one compost POA, program of activity, and I think 95% in the energy sector.
Solar or wind hydro, wind, those
Yeah. And there's the one thing I want to clarify here actually. So there's a misconception in internationally as well that everyone we know that these mini hydro projects are economically attractive without CDM. So that's the reality, right? And that's when I was working for the UN, I couldn't say that, but that's the sad reality. These are but that everyone knows, even the developed countries, they know that these are economically attractive, but they just want to give a little bit push, some subsidies into this sector to attract more investors. So earlier, during the first 10 years, they didn't talk about the net mitigation. So net mitigation, because when you have this CDM type of projects, you don't have a net mitigation. You just generate, you reduce here and someone increase. But they know, but now they are talking, because they are going step by step. Now they are talking about net mitigation. So in future, we will not have receive finance for this kind of, old hydro projects. Nara?
So recently read in the journal article how climate change is changing the environment in Sri Lanka. Responsible for some of the disasters like recently we had landslides in Bolivia and wildlife attacks in rural Sri Lanka where changing climate and what I want to ask is how climate finance is that climate finance to finance adaptation projects with land mitigation projects where we have to adapt the terms of forestry, deforesting, and adaptation for Queensland. So that's it.
There's another question now, and there's one question. So for this one, actually, adaptation. Yes, as I mentioned that earlier, we had only we were using the adaptation fund, and then it was not a big fund actually. But now Green Climate Fund is giving money for both adaptation and mitigation projects. If you look at, they have approved 8 proposals in last November meeting. And then out of 8, actually 6 are mainly adaptation. Sri Lanka doesn't have any project. We have not included any project in the proposal. And but these are meant for the adaptation one. Yeah, there are some adaptation projects. Yeah.
Another question on that. What do you think private systems like development under the Sri Lanka climate finance, climate fund framework? Is that a question for private citizens that can ask to invest green projects like CDM? CDM is some free already delivered, whereas your climate finance Sri Lankan framework. Is that a question that do you think that a question in future?
Sorry, future for what?
For private initiatives, for us to invest in green projects and have a return on our investment.
Yeah. So this is the one of the objective of Sri Lankan Climate Fund. We are 100% owned by the government, but we are not typical government body. So our aim is also the mandate that we have received from these 4 ministries, basically to build a private-public partnership, because private investment is necessary. This is crucial to make, and how you can contribute. There are a lot of opportunities in the green finance opportunities, even in Sri Lanka. I can give one example. Is this Milko biomass project, and also there are a lot of small scale, mini hydro solar PV systems in the tea factories and all those things. But there are a lot of policy barriers. Right? For example, when it comes to biomass, we have this supply issue, right? And then entity like Milko, they have been reluctant to give a project to a private sector, right? But that's why we intermediate and try to get the project and involve the private sector and give the government security, and then bring this project into the level. And definitely there is a scope for the private sector to involve, and we are already working with the private. Actually, we have already signed a couple of MOUs with the private sector to implement biomass technologies, and now we are also talking about a little bit power for the power projects as well. But these projects are not currently economically attractive or have some barriers. For example, we have one waste to energy project, and this one they need 35 cents USD per unit. In the current electricity tariff, they don't get that price. Of course, CB cannot give that price. Government cannot give that price. So now there are some. We are looking for the other means, because this waste is a huge issue in Sri Lanka. So, but the price is quite high, and there are a lot of political issues as well, because when it comes to I think Mr. Joseph knows very well about these things. Come to the waste, there's no owners, right? When you want to clean the waste, there's no owners, but when you are going to build a power plant, there are multiple owners, right? So then it's going to be a big issue. So now we are also working on a policy paper, because our aim is also to remove these, give us recommendations to ministries and remove these policy barriers. Then private sector will step in.
Paris Summit, developing countries were asked to submit a voluntary target. Is it?
Yes. Sorry, not voluntary. Before the Paris Summit, the UN asked all the countries to submit their voluntary. Intended means voluntary, intended nationally determined contribution. But in Paris, what they decided, out of 196 countries, 188 countries, it's a big achievement, submitted their INDCs, despite the differences between developed and developing. This is a great achievement in this negotiation. And but in the Paris, parties decided, countries together decided that it would become nationally determined contribution, which means it will be a mandatory, unless countries communicate different commitment before April 2016, when they start this signing the ratification.
Are those targets unconditional or conditional?
The both. There are some. For example, in Sri Lanka, we have most of the countries, most of the developing countries, they have conditional and unconditional. They say we will do this. We reduce. For example, Sri Lanka, what we say actually we reduce 4% of emission compared to 2010 baseline scenario, not the baseline. So our emission would be still high. Baseline scenario 4%, but this is unconditional. We will do it ourselves, and there are some things ambiguities. Actually, we are working on that now. But conditionally, we will go for 20% if we receive the international support. Yeah. Definitely, this is what will happen. Developed countries or the donors will look whether when they are going to give some climate finance, whether this is part of the NDCs and whether it is linked with the national development priorities.
In case those national voluntary targets being transferred to national determined targets, is there any mechanism of following? In case of if any country is not, in case mandatory, it has been made mandatory, then it has to be followed. What is the mechanism of following them?
Yeah, so it's a very good question actually. As I mentioned earlier, like in the Buddhism also we talk about the middle path, right? So on the Kyoto Protocol is really hard, and parties did not really agree. Not many countries signed, but then people talking about giving the full responsibilities to all the countries. Okay, you take your commitment, you define your baseline, and you define your target. That's the approach they had before the Paris. But now they have come to the middle path. They said, okay, you can decide your target, you can decide your baseline, that's fine. But we put an internationally agreed transparency framework, so which will monitor whether your commitment are being met, whether it is really fair. So IPCC has been mandated to develop such framework, and then UN will monitor every 5 years parties are supposed to communicate, and then UN will monitor whether they are meeting these targets, whether they are on the track or not. But they cannot take any action because this is not a binding. Paris Agreement is not binding, unlike Kyoto Protocol. But Kyoto Protocol is also, it's binding, just the name actually. So Canada just left because they couldn't meet, and the international community couldn't take any action. So it's binding in the name, but it's not really legally binding. So, but in this case, Paris, they have not included the binding text. So yeah.
Just one question more. Before that, Kyoto Protocol, there was Annex 1 system. Is that being superseded by this system?
Yeah. So Annex 1 system will be there until 2023, until they meet commitment 2 targets. But after commitment 2, there will not be more commitment. This will be effective from 2020, Paris Agreement. If 50% of the emitters sign or 50% of the emitters or 55% of the countries ratify the agreement in between 2016 April and 2017 April. So it depends. I think it's very likely that it will be ratified. Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Why these developing countries are financing under this private financing? Why are they doing it? I mean, this Germany and why are they doing it?
Okay. Why are they doing? Okay, this is a good question, because one thing is that they are historically responsible. So if you look at the convention, UN MRV, which means United Nations Convention on Climate Change, which is the big framework which everyone has agreed. So this Paris Agreement, Kyoto Protocol are within this whole framework. In that agreement, all the countries have agreed that developed countries are historically responsible for the global warming, right? So between mid 18th century and today, this GHG emission is what we have in the global is the majority is from the industrialization, which means the developed countries, because we are not yet industrialized, right? They have consumed a lot of coal and fossil fuel, and that made us less livable in this planet. So that responsibility is with them, and then they have the historical responsibility to help other developing countries to achieve their national development targets without using the fossil fuel or other high emitting technologies.
That means today that they are not getting any monetary benefit.
No. Okay. This is on the paper they are talking about this is what we have historical responsibility. But in reality, as I mentioned, no one is going to give a single penny. Just poor countries, no, we should give money because they will live. For example, Maldives. I should not tell like that, but let's say that if the level is rising, for the Maldives people will be living there only for another 50 years. So we should give enough. We should give a lot of money to enjoy them. So that's not the case. In return, they will be looking how they can trade their technologies. That's why CDM failed. The initial intention of the clean development mechanism, which is unwritten intention of the developed countries, is to transfer the technology. So they build a project, let's say in Sri Lanka, they build a hydropower plant. Japan build a hydropower plant in Sri Lanka. Not build, they purchase the credits from Japan, CDM projects in Sri Lanka. But in return, they should be able to sell their technology. So that was the unwritten intention. But it was not successful. And that's why parties were not motivated. So they tomorrow, they may want to sell their technologies. So that's why we should be tactful, and we should promote our local. As I mentioned this today, I met one of the Sri Lankan developer. He developed these biomass boilers. Of course, they have a lot of test reports and everything, but it's a bit high quality. And once we give the recognition to him that he has developed projects under the UNDP, so he can try to market this globally. We can try to export this technology to Africa and all those countries, But that's how we should think about. And definitely they will not give it freely. They will give little bit, but in return they will try to get more. they will show us a cat, or the rabbit, and try to get an elephant out of us. So that's the normal practice. That's but we should understand that when we deal with this.
Important time to relevant do you think what's the guarantee that we can get after doing all these things by 2025 temperature reduced by 1.5? And don't you think that now this is because the solar radiation which falls on normally historically reflect 100% reflected back. This is only the period recently this has due to that ice melting and things warming and those things happen. But I think after 50 years, the future generation, maybe 2 generations later, they will have the normal setup on this land. Therefore, what these developed countries trying to do is, as far as I feel, they want to make money out of this. They have some different agenda. If you look at this NIP 6, none in the governmental panel for climate change. If you look at the procurement, they have mentioned a lot of things against the IPCC, International Panel for Climate Change. The other hand, now, this is actually, as per the professor has rightly mentioned, Kala Vipatti. And they have you can see the Kala Vipatti. Just to make aware the risk, as gentleman mentioned, we should be very careful, we should not fall into the death trap. As younger generation, we have a lot of responsibilities on our hand. You are, I think, going to the right path. I hope we will continue this financing in a very fruitful manner to take maximum benefit to the country. I wish.
I also have a question. Now, biomass, you are talking about promoting biomass. Now, I have two questions. One is, what is the expected power generation by certain period? Then another question is, where are you going to get that wood firewood? What is the plan to get that firewood? Because we have cut the forest for some trees. How are you going to get them? What is the plan?
Yeah, that's a very good and difficult question. And this is the same thing, I think that even the CB has some concern, right? Because they are a bit reluctant to give approval for some of the biomass plant, because the question is how they are going to secure the biomass, quantity of biomass. Now I think still it's under research how they can ensure. But now government has some policies to utilize. They said that in the budget actually use underutilized and unutilized land for the crop and other purposes. Apparently, Glycidia has been defined as one of the crop, or I don't know, core crop or something. So it's possible. And also they have government has a policy to investors are there. As I mentioned, the foreign investors are there, but they need the certainty. When they invest, for example, we are facilitating one project for Japanese company. They are going to build a 10 megawatt plant, but they will invest only when they have the certainty how they can secure the biomass. So now government is going to give this on the long-term lease basis, those lands, in order to give the certainty, security that you will get this much biomass from this land. There are lots of unutilized and underutilized lands, but only thing is there is no harm leasing the land, but we need to put care. We have to carefully put the the clauses not to misuse this land for other purposes. So I think this how to secure the biomass, I cannot really give a firm answer yet, because things are not yet clear. Because if you look at the current Land Act and all those things, it's very difficult. But I heard one of the Sri Lankan company, they have mapped biomass availability, not just biomass availability, but the biomass that could be utilized in the power plant. and they have come up with some software using the Google Map and all those things, and they have calculated and so on that okay, we have sufficient. But apparently 50% of our energy needs is made by biomass. So keeping that is also a big task. So that's why now Sustainable Energy Authority really pushing on that, and we are also going, because at the end the people are why we don't buy a packet of biomass from the, if we can buy it from the supermarket or something. I think they are talking about one concept, probably I don't know whether there's anyone, Cadalla, right? So yeah, fuel depot. So they are going to promote like okay, it will be like a gas station. You will just go there and then you will get it like a handy bag of biomass and take it and then put it in the biomass store. But one thing we should not trap again, actually, there are some investors. Okay, now we have the cook stores with the efficiency 22%. We can have the cook stores with the efficiency 32%. But we should not just take that 32%, but we should really look what is the best available technology in the world. And then we should go for that if possible. Right? Otherwise, what happened in African countries, they just distribute like millions of cook stores, and because they get the money from the bill, get foundation and that foundation, this foundation, the efficiency is just couple of percentage high, and then after 2-3 years they have replaced again. So, and these investors, they just get money and then distribute, and that's all. Those poor people are not really getting the benefit. So we really need to think twice before we get any technology, whether it is sustainable, whether how they are going to use this money. Because there are a lot of people, what they are doing, they know funds available in the world, and that only the most developed country people know, right? And the funds available, they have the access, and we don't know. The Africans, they don't know. So what happens? They get trapped in the system. So we need to really think carefully how we should not get into trap and then but utilize it.
Another question. Countries like Singapore, they have energy policies. Like for a building, they have even energy efficiency. And when any electrical appliance is imported to the country, they will take that energy into that. Yeah, but in Sri Lanka, it's not mandatory. Even for a building like hotel also, energy efficiency is not mandatory. So will there be a qualification in future
Actually, this Sri Lanka Standard Institute, I think Dr. Senavira. So they are really working on a lot of standards, even for the biomass. They are working on a standard now to ensure that they are getting the quality biomass, right? Even for the building, I think we have the building code, right? It's not, but okay, I'm not an expert in that area. I think you are the expert in that field. My feeling is actually it is normal in any country because Singapore is advanced. It's almost a developed country. But based on my experience assessing the projects from developing countries under CDM, so what I know basically it is very difficult to go for mandatory policies at once because it's a question of money. If you can go for the high quality product, but then whether your society has money is the problem. So, but if you can still enforce. But the best thing is to go for the voluntary, and then you make it mandatory after certain years. But if you just put mandatory, the poor people will be significantly affected.
I mean, very wrong, but cutting trees, does it increase the global warming or it is?
Theoretically, when you cut trees, it should increase the global warming because they can't absorb the CO2, right?
Yeah, on the other hand, when you burn something, you give more and more carbon dioxide to the environment, and that to increase the global warming.
When you burn something.
Burn wood.
Actually, it depends. For example, landfills, right? So we just go and dump things in the landfill. So most of the countries, this was the big problem, and they just dump. But when you dump in the landfill, what happened actually, it generates methane. The global warming potential of methane is, like around 26 now, right? Earlier it was 23, now 26, right? 28, right? Because IPCC, they have, yeah. So which is significantly high. So it's better you burn it, and then when you calculate the, okay, if you do the open burning, and rather than generating the methane, still it is GHG emission in total, the carbon dioxide equivalent is low. But if you can do the control burning, it would be even low. But if you can use control burning and build in the power plant, that would be even less. Yeah,
Is that how these biomass power plants are being considered as kind of global warming, anti-global warming type of things, and we are supporting it to the global warming?
No, for the biomass projects, actually, what we are doing, I think, I don't know whether you have something on that because you're from CB, right? Yeah. And what I understand, actually, we are going for a short rotation trees, right? Yeah, SRP, right? So which we basically we grow it and we cut, and then that is used, but that will, you know, it will not really, that cutting process will not really affect the whole process. That is my understanding, right? It is not that you go and cut the big tree in the country and then you will not grow, but this one is you grow it, but when you cut after like 2 meters, so I don't know, there's some upper part, right? Yeah, only the upper part, and then there are some scientific research. Actually, it will not affect, it will not increase. I'm not an really expert.
That's fine. But now this type of things, because you need a lot of acreage for your megawatt of generation, so that you will be mainly going for monocrop cultivation. And in countries like us, these are giving very, which we do not know, very bad effects. We have a lot of high quality of biodiversity, and for this type of small financial gains. So we have to be very careful, as the UN is also saying, and for this methane generation. And I saw some several articles saying that even the paddy fields are now contributing more to methane generation, and now there can be a fund to, you know, the paddy fields and construct houses or something. So as a nation, we have to be very careful just not to
Accept some.
go behind and greedy of these pennies and use all our assets, because we have to think of about 1,000-2,000 years later, we have to secure this country for this recycling longevity. Understanding this, that will be very, very careful. Money greed is.
Yeah, I think just to clarify one thing, your point, actually, our position, we are not a typical private organization, and our intention is also not to get more return on investment. So this part, you know, the mostly government are working of the interest of the country, right? It is not the money. So we are really working on that. We are not only looking at, but adaptation, for the methane generation in the agriculture, actually we are working on project in the ADP, with UNDP, but it's a very early stage. I don't have much point. But with regard to your concern about the using the crops, definitely it has an impact on the food. And in Brazil, actually, United States is encouraging to generate more biodiesel, and then they have also agreed to purchase. Sorry, I think I should not use the word they. So USA has agreed to purchase biodiesel from Brazil, and in the long run. And you know what has happened? When you generate biodiesel, then it emits more emission than the natural gas. So when you calculate the life cycle emission, as a part of in my university, actually, because I'm doing my PhD also on part-time basis at the University of Radboud. So my what I have two professors. One of my professors, actually, he did an analysis for the life cycle assessment. So he found that biodiesel, it is not. We all talk about biodiesel is green, but if you look at the life cycle analysis of the biodiesel in Brazil, actually, not, I don't know, we have not done it. It emits more methane, more emission than burning natural gas. So you are absolutely right. We have to be very careful when we accept. We need to think twice. That's why we need more engineers in this field. So we need because that's what we need, actually. You know, the knowledge, technical knowledge, and so if we can bring technical knowledge of the engineers into this sector, and then we can do a lot of things. What I have seen, actually, in most of the negotiation, most of the climate change area, there are a lot of engineers. So because they understand how we can translate these things into the sustainable way. And but what we are lacking is actually, my feeling is actually we don't have many engineers in this field. Now I think we need more engineers into this.
Just one last question to me. Some projects like Radboud City project, new one, is going to remove or destroy a lot of small kind of mountains, not mountains, at least peaks or something, which for which you have to remove all the trees on top and remove the soil cover, and then you fix a crop. And in a small country like us, and this very important topographical changes. So, are we not contributing to global projects like that? And I don't know. Can we stop that project and claim some global warming funds from the rest of the world? I don't know. But okay, forget about the fund. But should we allow these things? On one hand, we are contributing to global warming, and on the other hand, there are several other issues. Okay, forget about the other issues, but about even when we consider global warming.
Yeah.
So we have so many engineers, and
Colombo ports. Sorry,
Yes, about that port city, that project that developer has already been given for assessment for EIA, the environmental impact assessment. That has been undergone. I don't know what the current details there, whether it has passed or not. But basically, the assessment report is weighted before proceeding the next step. So the developer is working on that. As he rightly said, it's very true. We should, if you have the environmental perspective, we should stop the project actually. But if you have the other perspective, the developer to approach should through, we don't know what will happen in the future. So we will get that.
I'm not expert in that port city and the EIA thing, but I can take another example actually, which would be very similar to your concern, right? For example, let's say that now we are going to build, we would have built 12 coal power plant without this NCRE target. So now what we are doing actually, we are going to build only 9 coal power plant, and then we are displacing basically 3 coal power plant. For that, we can bring climate finance. And if we can replace the remaining 9 also, we can bring more climate finance. But also we have to make sure that we will have consistent electricity supply, because that's the most important thing for the country. Of course, emission reduction is also important, but we should be economically sustainable. We should not just stop all. I would love to have 100% renewable energy by 2030 actually. But it doesn't, just because someone tells us you need to go for 100%, we need to think twice. But as a nation, because Paris Agreement it's not only about the emission, it's about the lands, political and economic landscape of the globe. So when United States gets some targets to reduce their emission, it has direct impact on their economy, because they are going to pass this into their consumers and the industries, and then those industries will not be competitive with the Chinese industries, and then they will have less economic gain. China will have added advantage. So that's the thing, and we need to look at it. We just don't want to go for 100% renewable by 2050 just because Mr. Obama says. We need to think what is good for us. At the end, that is value. We should voice in the international forum, and we should say, okay, we know what we can do. We will do this one. But of course, we don't want to be angry and fight. But in a polite manner, we should tell them what we can do. Because first we need to meet our basic human needs, right? And then we need, because I don't think we have 100% housing in the country. Our roads are not good. So we also need to think all these things, and that they understand. That's why they talk about sustainable development. The national development priority is the key, which has been accepted by all the countries. So we don't want to just change our national development priorities just because one country or one donor says to do so. Of course, when it comes to practically, there are some difficulties because country is in a now difficult situation, with the 1 trillion budget deficit, and I don't know how to manage this situation. I'm not
this biomass turning more biomass into fuel city. We have to be careful in this because 50% of the energy, primary energy comes from biomass, that is for domestic cooking, and the other part is industrial thermal electricity generation and heating. Now, most of these industries are now they like to have this biomass boiler, as you mentioned. Now, we have to be very careful of the supply chain. Now, our national food basket is actually based on this ecosystem leaders. Now, they are the only bees, they are the ones who are going flower to flower and doing pollination. We are not doing that. Now, if they say goodbye to this funding, what will happen to our food basket? We need to go and pollinate. Oh, we need to have GMO, modified organism. Then that will be having a very big impact, as we have 29% item forest now. Now that is all being now industry are getting into this forest department and dealing and putting monoculture in this crops. Therefore, we have to be very careful when we are taking policy decisions. That is the challenge we have. Our voices, I don't think that can be enough because it's very need to educate the policy makers for taking those kind of decisions. They like to they want to say biomass is green and zero emission and something like that. They like to promote this one, not in a very good manner. And the other thing is this land use change. Now the original land that was there for forest now is being changed for some other plantation. This population growth, the demand has been rising, and therefore there is a very big challenge we have. Otherwise, future generation curse us for not doing the correct, not taking the correct decision at the right time. Therefore, I think you will be one of the very key person taking this kind of challenges.
And for that, actually, again in the budget, actually, we have a budget proposal which has been kind of agreed to increase our forest cover. Actually, our budget proposal should have been a national policy document. So it says to increase the national forest cover from 29% to 32%. So we are going to increase, and for that they have government is going to allocate 10 billion Sri Lankan rupees for the forest management, carbon certification, and 10 billion. 10,000 million Sri Lankan rupees. Money, how to find this?
My question is, many waste is generated. So, when we talk about biomass, when we talk about sustainable development, people use this waste in such a way that actually boosting those areas like power generation. But initially, it's a technology. So, technology in other forms so that we can generate energy. So, is there some flexibility to replace for funds or something like that to take a technology or do some R&D work so that we can use it? Yes.
For the Green Climate Fund, because which is the main fund source we are talking about, they talk about the grant, but there is no clear reference to R&D. Having said that, the fund and the grants coming from the UNDP and the World Bank and the ADP, they have the R&D component. So we can or could potentially use even this the UNDP project that we are managing. So there is a R&D component to research the new technologies. You know, how we can further improve these biomass boilers. Definitely we can, but we need to better utilize it. That's why The another thing what we have is we don't have a very good relationship with the universities. Actually, we should really use those expertise in the universities with the industries. And we are going to do 2 research document. For that, I'm trying to really engage University of Moratuwa and also a foreign university and also some expert from the industry. Because if you have a good connection, I mean, in other countries, I'm not telling that just because Europe has this model we should implement here. No, but the thing is there are some advantage if we can utilize our universities and also give some funding for the universities, right? It will bring that money. Otherwise, the whole bunch of money will go back to an international consultant or someone. And we can also utilize their exposure, international experience, but that the majority of the money should stay within the country because we know what are the problems and we should use. If we have money, we can do a lot of R&D. It's just a money. If China can come up with 1,000, inventions every year, just because they put more money into the R&D. But why we can't come? Because we don't put a lot of money. It's just a money, but at the end of the day, and yeah, you are absolutely right. We really know this UNDP fund. There's R&D component, and we are really trying to engage. Currently, Dr. Sugatapal is involved from the university. And we are also trying to engage from the industries.
Class. Only 5 minutes more. Please wait here. So thanks, very encouraging and interesting subject, and not only a subject, actually it's the reality of the situation, what the country as a country where we go. And very interesting questions came up a couple of times. Actually, I also learned a lot of things. And one of interesting question: why developed countries are funding us? Are there is there any hidden agenda behind of that? So that is a very interesting and questions. Actually, I also got shocked from that question. But I think our engineer Buddika Hemashantha is a very energetic young engineer, is in doing a lot of responsible roles these days, involved with government processes. So we hope that he will take care about our country and country policies and make the country forward in terms of getting this climate finance without trapping anywhere and getting into trouble and going into worse conditions. So thank you very much, Engineer Buddika Hemashantha. We really appreciate your time of more than 2 hours for us, investing for us, despite of your busy schedules these days. So thanks a lot. Finally, I would like to give him a small appreciation, not for worth for his time. Actually, it's nothing for him, I know, but for really appreciate his effort, and ISL has prepared a small token of appreciation for him. I would like to invite our past president, fellow member, Engineer Dr. D.L.O. Mendis, to give him the token of appreciation, and also our resource person, Engineer Buddika. Please come.
Thank you for the document. Where is the first slides in engineering faculty and Professor Alex Paul made a memorable statement and thanks that I have been repeating all the time. He says our country can be very rich and self-sufficient if we export brains. So we have seen it of that.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. And finally, one minute, and I would like to call upon Engineer Indika to give the vote of thanks. We will take only 1 minute and wind up the day. Thanks.
Thank you, Engineer Narangada. Mr. Buddika Hemashantha, thank you very much sharing your views on environment and the climate
and the international what the technology and the policies with us. Okay, his time, because he's a very busy person, and in spite of his time, he came to on the invitation of building service committee. We invite him to make this valuable awareness program. It's not a lecture, it's a kind of awareness program. So it's very successful. Thank you very much. Then secondly, I thanks to IESL staff who give their resources and their support to make this event successful. Finally, those who came to this event and participate this event and ask questions and share their views, that also make this event very successful, and my thanks go to them also.